You're listening to Being LUCA Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. Welcome to Being LUCA Podcast. I'm your host, Layla, and this podcast is intended to inspire, empower, and provide practical tools to raise your awareness and elevate your consciousness, so that you can embody your highest self and live your ideal life. Okay, I am back with a new episode, and today I sit down with Annette, and it was such an amazing conversation that I'm so excited to share with you. So let me tell you a little bit about Chanel and what beautiful gifts she shares with the world. So Annette is an Ayurvedic preconception coach and advanced Ayurvedic practitioner in training who loves to teach women how to amplify their fertility. She earned a Master's of Health Science degree with an emphasis in health promotion, a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology, an Ayurvedic pregnancy and postpartum nutrition and support doula certification, a DONA international postpartum doula certification, and a Permaculture Design certification. She loves plants and sustainable community living. She is totally a soul sister and a girl after my own heart. So she is just a wealth of knowledge, and she is committed to serving 1,000 women to embody their divine freedom and help them to embody divine creative capacity and cultivate their own vitality through the wisdom of Ayurveda, especially around the preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum time. I so wish I have known Chanel before I became pregnant, and in my postpartum journey, I know that my experience with pregnancy and postpartum would have been such a different, a more positive and grounded experience. But of course, everything happens for a reason, and there were many, many lessons that were learned. So the reason I wanted to sit down and talk to Chanel is because truly I think that there's nothing more important if you are thinking of becoming a parent than to prepare yourself, both mind, body, and spirit, for the journey ahead. Parenting, there's nothing like parenting to really catapult you into your growth, your evolution, into the next phase of your journey as a human being. And Chanel, the information that she shares in the podcast is so important, and the services she provides are so important in the world. I really think that truly sustainably to change the world, we need to approach conception from a place of consciousness. And so when she came into my life and I saw the work that she was doing, I knew immediately that I wanted to have this conversation, because there's truly nothing more important than preparing ourselves for the journey ahead from a place of groundedness and nourishment and preparation, so that we don't pass all of the habits and all of the trauma that we might be carrying unconsciously to our unborn children. And really, that's how I think we can begin to create a more conscious world, is by doing the work prior. Now, if you're like me and you have, already are a parent, then this is not intended to make you feel bad or to have regrets. Everything in life happens for a reason. And I think that it's still important to know and practice self-care, which I believe that's what truly Ayurveda is about, is the science of life. And it's all about learning how to care for our mind, our body, and our spirit, because we are all three. And yeah, I'm just really excited for you to dive into this episode. There is a lot that Chanel shares that can be so impactful in a positive way. And I think that you will take away a lot from this episode. At least that's my intention and my hope. So with all that said, please sit back and enjoy this episode. All right. Welcome, Chanel, to Being LUCA podcast. Thank you so much for making the time. I'm so excited for us to dive in. I think this is such an important topic that I could talk about for hours and hours. And I'm so grateful the universe connected us, because what could be better than starting this conscious journey from before conception? So before we dive into all the amazing, interesting, juicy topics, I would love it if you could just share a bit of your story, how you came to this world of consciousness, your own personal hero's journey.
Right. What a way to put it. Well, thanks for having me. I'm grateful to you and I'm glad to be connected. And I came to Ayurveda during a really big shift in my life, actually. I was in the process of realizing that I wasn't in my forever relationship that had been very long standing, and we'd been married for a long time and had our 2 children. And in that process, as it goes, things start to fall away that maybe aren't aligned with us anymore, and new things come in. And that's absolutely how I experienced my coming to Ayurveda. And while obviously separation and divorce isn't the easiest, it was a very loving and caring process for me. So while we were consciously separating, there was a big shifting happening in my experience, and I was able to meet a lot of people, and I found this school here in Colorado, which is where I live right now in Boulder County, Colorado. I found this school and they were teaching Ayurveda and have a really specific program that's focused on pregnancy and postpartum doula work, which is always something I've been really interested in, because my own experience in pregnancy and postpartum wasn't the easiest. And as many of us have experienced, that a lot of our passions often come from something that we might mentally categorize as a hardship, right? Something that didn't come as easy, and there may have been some struggle. So that was my experience of having some difficulties in pregnancy, having some really intense difficulties postpartum. And when I found that there was a school that married the 2 things that were really present for me at the time, of wanting to learn about the Vedas, wanting to learn about Ayurveda, and marrying that passion to supporting women, then I was in. And so that's how I found Ayurveda. And they say that it comes to you when you're ready. I had of course heard of it many times before, but in my experience, kind of found it a little bit confusing until I met my Ayurvedic teacher and was immersed in somebody who really had that lineage and that expertise to be able to then bring clarity to me, if you will. So that's how I found Ayurveda. And from that, I was able to learn so much about how it supports the human body, mind, soul, the entire being of a person. And it just lit up my fire for supporting women in their vitality, really. And yes, I started off wanting to learn about the pregnancy and postpartum, and that was amazing. And then decided, once I finished that program, to enroll in their advanced Ayurvedic practitioner program, which is 4 years, because all of my questions were expanding beyond the doula program. I was like, I want to know more, tell me more. And so now that's what I'm in now, and have created this whole business called Bija Vitality. And that is focusing on, yes, supporting women in that pregnancy and postpartum time, but also with preconception.
That's a long
So
4 years. How far along are you in?
yes, so I finished my first year of the doula program, and now I'm in my first year of the practitioner program.
It's a big
So it is. It definitely is. And I have 2 kids of my own, as you know. And so it's
Your
been
hands
a very big commitment for sure. And there are moments where I have to really take a deep breath, because Ayurveda is very beautiful, but it's also there's a complexity when you're learning it from a practitioner standpoint too. So it's almost like a devotion to myself and to Ayurveda. So I do take it really seriously.
Yeah, because
so that's
you have to become whatever you're teaching, right? Because you can't really preach something without actually embodying the teaching at its deepest level. So I can see how it would be like an initiation in and of itself.
Totally. Absolutely. I definitely have experienced that. And that, I think, is what brought me to that passion for wanting to help women, is because I did experience a lot of difficulty, right, in my pregnancy and postpartum time. And from that was able to embody a lot of the practices that helped me to then learn how to thrive. And learning Ayurveda myself has completely changed my way of living. And so, like you're talking about with embodying something, that's absolutely the way I experienced it. You have to devote yourself to the practices. Otherwise, how will you then bring clarity to somebody else who is needing it through this modality?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about how I came to Ayurveda. As far as how I came to be on this path of wanting to live more consciously, it's very much intertwined with my big life shifting that happened. And I would say even a few years before I went through this period of, without sounding too woo-woo, this period of waking up, right? There was a lot of questions that started to arise in me, of all these big questions. Who am I? How did I get here? What am I doing here? What am I supposed to be doing while I'm here? What happens when I'm not here? These questions started to arise in me, and I didn't really have anybody to talk to about any of these questions at the time. I had a long-standing break from an organized religion that I was coming out of, and what some people also call like the dark night of the soul, of just being totally a little bit jaded, if you will, angry, sad, all of the things that come up, and confused, just feeling really separate from myself. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. If you're comfortable, if you wanted to add something else, I think I know for myself, when I hear someone's story and they really, if you feel comfortable opening that up, because it does take courage to open that vulnerable side, if you could share more of the struggles that you went through and then the practices that helped you, because that's what all of this is about, right? We can see a part of ourselves in someone's journey, recognize we're all in this together. And through, I believe, us sharing how we find our own way, what supports us on our path, perhaps it can, resonate with someone and they can begin to look into these modalities or these rituals or these practices that can support them as well. So if you're comfortable, you could marry that, and afterwards, or you can go whichever way feels better. Just a summary, or because I know it's such a deep topic of what is Ayurveda, but
nutshell, what is it and how can it support us in our daily modern day life?
Yeah.
So start with that and then go into kind of the challenges and the practices, or however it feels right. But I think it'd be so helpful.
Yeah, totally. I definitely think that my first in, if you will, to feeling like I'm more than a brainstem and the brain and a brainstem was through yoga. I started to, I was so exhausted from having my children, and just my child, my son especially, was getting up so early in the morning.
I've been as well with my son. Maybe it's a person.
Oh man. And I just wasn't able to function really well. And so I just decided I'm going to get up every single morning early and I'm going to get on this mat. I would roll out of bed and it would be right there next to my bed. And that's what I could muster. And through that, I would have my earbuds in and just do guided yoga. I had never really practiced it before. But it was through that I really felt like there's something else happening here. That's not just like this mind and body. There's something else happening, right? And so that was my into then asking all of these questions of what's going on and what am I doing here?
Those are such fundamental questions. I mean, I feel like if someone is, I mean, if you've had your awakening, you've already asked these questions, but if you haven't experienced that yet, those are the fundamental questions to dive deep into, because once you start asking them, you will start to hear the answers, and that's going to like change your entire worldview.
Yeah.
Way, right?
Yes, but I will say in my experience, it was really heartbreaking at first to have those questions come up.
Okay. How so?
I just, having grown up in an organized religion.
Which one?
I grew up Christian. All of those questions are answered.
Answered for you, given to you.
Exactly. Exactly. So when I had stepped away and decided that I just needed to breathe on my own without that, I didn't have any of those questions answered.
Can I ask you why you felt like that wasn't doing it for you anymore? Because I think that I feel like a lot of, the audience members that kind of grew up with me from the Luxy days that are in organized religions. And I feel like some of the topics that I share just don't resonate because there's so many beliefs that come with organized religion. So as someone who's experienced that, I haven't, luckily for me, I don't have that background of like conditioning of religious beliefs, but I think it can be really helpful to, where was that disconnect? At what point did it not do it for you anymore? Those answers that were given to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting because it does relate to having children. And I was married at the time, and I started to ask myself, can I really teach this to my child that's not even born yet? Yes. Yes. I always knew that it was going to be in my dharma to have children. I always knew that. And so I started to go, could I really teach this to my child, that if they don't follow steps A, B, and C, that they are going to be punished?
Goosebumps everywhere, like, oh.
Yeah. And that they are born inherently flawed. Could I teach that? Can I teach that to my kid that hasn't come here yet? And and not to say that there aren't beautiful things that are in all religions, because really what I have now come to see is everything really stems from the Vedas, which are the most ancient texts. And they're not really even texts, if you will, but for the sake of trying to explain, They're the most ancient texts that are available to humanity. And they are all in Sanskrit and all vibration. And it's not even a language, right? So
Like
everything, this is,
like
what's that?
It's codes.
Exactly. That's right. That's vibrational codes. Exactly. But this is why we see so many overlaps within organized religion, right? But what happens is they stem out and branch out further. And what happens is it becomes a means of controlling and keeping the human being to feel separate and powerless. And as though we are needing something external from us to be safe, to be okay. And I just started to realize that I couldn't teach my kids this, that weren't even here yet.
So good.
And so I credit them ahead of time, for bringing that to me before they even came in the physical form. Yeah. So that's a little bit about the religious piece and what caused me to take a step back. And man, as I've gone more into this journey of waking up, if you will, and letting the false narratives burn away, that has come up for sure. That has come up for sure. But it was this notion that I can't teach my children that they are inherently flawed, or that if they don't do certain steps that they're also not going to be safe or be okay, or that they need to live in a fear-based, reaction-based actions in the way that they're extending in their life in order to be okay.
Absolutely. And I think that is the difference, right? I feel like you said, all religion at the core, at the essence, speaks of the same thing, because there is only one truth, right? It's all one, it's all source, it's all love. But like you said, to keep humanity powerless in this old kind of Piscean age of third dimensional matrix, it was constructed based on fear. Everything, every single construct is fear. So I feel like this awakening is that invitation back to love. And that's what a beautiful invitation that you had with your kids as the pure souls that they are, awakening that seed of truth and love within your own heart. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think
for sure. Yeah, for sure. So I can talk a little bit now about Ayurveda. So Veda means the knowledge, right? Or the truth. And then Ayu is life. So Veda also could mean science. So it's really, when you say Ayurveda, we're talking about the science of life, the wisdom of life, those two together. And there are 4 Vedas, and I won't go too deep into all of that, but in those 4 Vedas is where we find the information about Ayurveda. And it is a beautiful consciousness-based healing modality that I haven't found one single thing that it doesn't talk about as far as how to help the human body in their experience.
Can you back up just for a second, just for my own understanding? When you say 4 Vedas, is like 4 different parts, or like what is different parts?
Yep. Okay. Yep. Exactly. And within those parts, there's so many subparts. And really, Layla, the Vedas are meant to have been passed down orally. I mean, because it's a vibrational language, if you will, because it's vibration. It's meant to be given orally. This is why the notion of guru and student is passing down that knowledge from guru to student, which we all have and are guru and self, right? But the tradition of the lineage or the parampara, which is what I've been, that's the word that I was taught of how to say that, to explain the passing down of information, is through oral transmutation, like what's the word? Yes. So so Ayurveda has so much that is comprised of, but it really is looking at the macro and everything that we have in nature with all of the different elements and seeing how they interact in this human in this human body that we all have. And there, it's full of amazing practices that can help us to keep ourselves in perfect balance.
Beautiful.
And whatever ailments there might be, or things that do become imbalanced in our system, there are all of these tools to use, whether it's mantra or herbal formulations, to the details, to the very details of, here's this herbal formulation that goes with this, and you take it with this ghee, or you take it with this milk, you know, you take it during this time of the day. It's like so expansive. I can't even explain. This is why when I say learning Ayurveda is laser focusing when I'm in my courses and in my classes, because there's so much there. It's so expansive. And one thing that I do like to say, because it can be overwhelming to some people, is there's so many do's and don'ts, and it doesn't have to be like that. And it isn't like that. It is a supportive healing system for everybody. And the beauty of us as humans is we all have our own constitution. So I'm just going to get a smidge technical for you. And I think it's important. That's why we all have our own constitution. And maybe you or some of your audience have heard of the vata and pitta and kapha, right? And those each are represented by different elements in the body. But when we are born, we have a very specific constitution at the moment of conception and at the moment of birth, that when we are born, that's what we are. So vata, pitta, or kapha one will be strongest, often two will be strongest. And those are your doshas, right? So for instance, pitta, which is represented by fire as the main, you know, some people may be predominantly pitta, and then vata might be their second dosha, and then kapha their third. And the reason this is important is because as an Ayurvedic practitioner, or when you are approaching yourself with the Ayurvedic practices, you need to know what your prakriti is, which is what your constitution is. What are your main doshas, and how does that affect the way that you are as a human? And from that,
dosha refers to what exactly?
So the doshas are, they mean flaw, really. They mean flaw, but it's not really a great way to describe it, because we can't really translate things perfectly. But it's often what can get out of balance the quickest, you know, in us.
Like a weakness, like a weak point or something.
Something that if is not imbalanced can become helter-skelter, right?
Got it. Okay. Perfect.
But prakriti is your main, that's how all three of your doshas line up, like where you are in your strength, right? When you are living in your best balance, like all those things are great, they're fantastic, and you are living really, really well and in harmony with all of those. and it's made up of those 3 doshas. So when you're thinking about Ayurveda, coming from the Vedas, all of these beautiful practices, and then applying that to the individual, it's very specific, because you have what your primary constitution is, and then you have what's off balance in that moment when you're meeting that practitioner, or when you're seeing something in yourself. And so Ayurveda has these beautiful practices to bring everything back into balance. And I just want to talk for a second about the importance of this with preconception, because the Vedas talk about that the moment, it's so intense, Layla, but the moment of conception, the actual moment of conception, the mindset and the state of the mother and father in their mind and in their body, when that moment happens, is an indicator and a creator of that baby's prakriti, of their constitution, that very moment. So the state of the mother, the state of her body, the state of her mind is so important. The state of the father, the state of his mind, the state of his body is so important, and will be a determining factor of that baby's constitution right then. And yes, you take into account, of course, genetics, and of course, how the pregnancy goes, also so important for the state of the mother, and the moment of birth too. Those all play a role in what that child's constitution are, but the moment of conception is super important.
That makes sense, because it's your level of consciousness, which is really vibration, which is really like, if you are not at a certain, the way I'm just trying to process it, right? If you're not holding a highest vibration in your consciousness, then the soul that enters can only match you where you're at. So it's almost like the type of souls that are able to be drawn to you are only of a certain caliber of vibration, if that makes sense. At least that's how I'm understanding it. So that is the coolest ever. Wow.
Yeah, it's so cool. And it's also so intense to think about that.
Oh my gosh.
And so what I like to encourage people, women especially, who are thinking about getting pregnant, who are thinking about having a baby, is, okay, that's wonderful to have that intention. And I am so supportive of it. And the reason that I created Bija Vitality is to support all of these women in cultivating their vitality and unearthing what's already there within them to be at their best, and using Ayurvedic principles to help them cultivate that vitality. With that comes, let's use these practices to tune yourself to who you really are, so that when you are ready for that moment of conception, your state of being is more aligned and tuned with who you really are than not, because it's going to affect everything. It's going to affect everything with your baby. So we talk a lot about where the mind goes, the body follows, right? And so with preconception coaching, I focus on it's a 3-leaf focus. And the first one is cultivating the mind. And we have talked about this before, of the importance of cultivating a fertile mind before anything else. And like I said, with things coming up with me when I was stepping away from religion, and even now today, as I'm still in this journey, in this path, this experience, things come up. They just are going to come up in the human experience. And so it's best to start the process before you have kids, if I'm going to be really frank. And no guilt, no shame at all. If that wasn't your experience, it certainly wasn't my experience. If for the listeners that maybe they've already had children and that wasn't their experience either, to have done some of this work, if you will, ahead of time, all good. It's all good. There's no guilt. There's no shame. You're perfectly on time. You have everything that you need right now. But for those people who are, those women who are wanting to consider getting pregnant, there's really beautiful practices to cultivate a fertile mind ahead of time, by letting go of these limiting beliefs that we have, by even noticing the patterned thinking that we carry around all the time. And there's affirmations and getting into the feeling of who we really are and who we want to be as a mother before you even are conceiving.
Beautiful.
So that's the first leaf. And then the second, of course, is beautiful body vitality practices, all steeped in this wisdom of Ayurveda. And there's so many amazing practices that can be done depending on what your prakriti, your constitution is. And then the third leaf is, I'm super passionate about helping people cultivate a beautiful sacred home environment that has a detoxed load. You like able to detox a lot of the chemicals, and because those all affect your hormones, they affect the way that your body is, and they build up in the system. So there's so many wonderful things with air quality, water quality. What are you cooking with? What are you eating off of? What are you drinking? What are you sleeping on? It's endless, and that isn't meant to be overwhelming, but just supportive for wherever someone is in their non-toxic journey. So that's the 3-leaf focus with my preconception coaching, is cultivating fertile mind, cultivating body vitality, and a sacred non-toxic home environment. And I do appreciate being able to then help women in their once they do get pregnant, their support of what to eat, how to take care of yourself. Those practices all continue on into pregnancy. And then in Ayurveda with postpartum, that's a whole nother thing. That postpartum is a whole nother thing.
Because I feel like each part of this journey is like a chapter all on its own, right? Because we are the vessel for the soul, which is really like the, generations kind of coming through us. And so it makes sense that each phase would require its certain preparation and kind of sustainable practices that allow you to go through it with utmost harmony. And well, gosh, if only I knew all this stuff before, but it's also,
I know.
So that's amazing. And what a gift to give to yourself and to your own children. To me, there's literally nothing better for humanity than for us to move towards this conscious conception. And yeah, if you wanted to talk more about the after, like the postpartum or anything else in regards to this, because again, it's like a different chapter. Once you close that chapter, okay, now the being is here.
Yeah.
You have to now become something you were not before, which is a mother or a parent, which is like a whole other initiation. So yeah,
it really is. Yeah, it really is. Well, with Ayurveda, they say, you take care of the mother postpartum for the first 42 days, and you then take care of them for the next 42 years.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And there's a whole beautiful layout and plan of what to eat the first day, the second day, third, fourth day, your first week, what foods are the most nourishing, what to stay away from, what is going to help build up the Agni, which is the fire, which is the foundation in Ayurveda, is our fire inside of us. And after you've had your baby, that is depleted, right? And that pitta, that fire, is depleted. And vata, which is more the wind element and like feeling flighty and airy, and also the wind, that open space in our womb that is now there, is really prominent. So postpartum is all about keeping that vata down and keeping us really grounded and giving the nourishment through the herbs and protocols and practices to build up that Agni and build up and rejuvenate that mother again. And it's a whole thing. It's a whole beautiful practice that you can do. And in my trainings, we learned, I'll share this, and maybe some are familiar, but we learned about Abhyanga. Are you familiar?
I heard of that, no.
So Abhyanga is a warm oil application on the body. And Layla, you're supposed to have it every single day as a postpartum mother. Can you imagine? So traditionally,
just hearing like warm, like it's just so nourishing.
It's so juicy and sensual and just like so nourishing. But it's this warm oil application on the body with these really beautiful strokes that are all they're very specific, and it is a lymphatic tissue massage, and it goes and the oil penetrates into all 7 dhatus, which is in Ayurveda all the tissues from your blood, plasma, muscles, bones, all the way down to your reproductive tissues. And it's super grounding. And sesame oil is often what's used depending on where you live, because it's hot in nature, right? And so in postpartum, you're trying to build that heat. But it is a beautiful practice. And it's also beautiful for women who are in preconception. It's contraindicated in pregnancy because there's already so much heat happening in pregnancy. But when you are in postpartum, it's essential. And if you are in preconception and you've cleansed the body enough, then you can then do these oil applications on your body to help to rejuvenate all of the tissues down to the shukra, which is the reproductive tissues. But Ayurveda is amazing, Layla. It just is. There is something for everything, and I so appreciate it. And it honestly is humbling to me that I am learning it. If I'm being quite frank, I have an amazing teacher and get to learn from other amazing teachers. And my Ayurvedic teacher has 7 generations worth of Ayurvedic doctors in his lineage. So to learn from him is humbling. And I'm so grateful to be able to then take it all in and be in a place to share it, to teach women and support them using it and extend myself. It feels like a coming home. I've said this many times as I've explained it. It feels like a coming home to me, to be able to extend myself in this way.
Sounds like it's your dharma, like it's your mission in this life. And what the feeling I'm getting when you talk about Ayurveda is like the knowledge and wisdom of all of the grandmothers that ever lived distilled to these practices, right? That's what it sounds like. Like the grandmas would tell you, like, I have my grandma's sister, she's still alive. And anytime my mother talks to her, she will be like, something's off or somebody. And she will give you these like home remedies or whatever, like do it like this and warm it up like that. And it's the truth because they knew. And like you said, it's all passed down through verbal communication, like from grandmother to the next generations. And like, how does it get any better than that? I think in the Western cultures, we've just lost connection with that. We've lost, like, that connection's been severed because our focus has been on unimportant things, let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
But now I feel like this wisdom is coming back because we are going back to that kind of, I feel like in this conscious community, that tribal community feel. 2.0, of course, different version, more evolved, but yeah, like we need to remember how to live in balance. And this is it, like you said, right? The science of knowledge of being human. And all of these layers and levels, like, holy moly, it just sounds incredible. Like, this is what we should be teaching kids, right? You know,
Yes.
my deepest desire to create this new way of educating kids. Imagine if this is what kids were taught.
Yes, I know.
Never
I know.
experience sickness or disease because you know how to bring yourself back to balance. Like it changes the
Yes. Yes. That's exactly right. And I love that you said that. And I may have talked to you about this before, but I'm going to say it again, is if you want to change the world, right? One way is through changing the woman.
Absolutely.
And because if you have a woman who knows how to bring herself back home, right? We all are on our path, and if you will. And so sometimes we stray from home. But if you can bring yourself back home, and it doesn't matter necessarily what the modality is, because there are many. This is why there's so many different things in the Vedas, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. But with Ayurveda, it's a beautiful way to bring yourself home. And if there's self-care practices there that are so empowering, that are not necessarily complicated, and it's sitting with ourselves and knowing how to use these beautiful practices to bring ourselves back home to balance. And if you have a woman who can do that before she conceives and then is pregnant and doing those beautiful practices while she is pregnant, and the baby is also in that experience with her, and then is doing this in postpartum, and then that baby is growing up in that care, in that level of care, and then gets to witness their mother doing all of these self-care practices continually. Because Ayurveda is not, oh, here I am in preconception season, oh, I'm in pregnancy season, oh, I'm in postpartum season, and that's it. No. It is, again, when Ayurveda finds you, it's beautiful. It is a whole beautiful, supportive way of living. And so then that child gets to experience witnessing the mother and the father. Hopefully, we shouldn't forget about the fathers, but I am speaking specifically about women, because this is where my niche is of helping in preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum. But the fathers are essential as well. So witnessing the parents having these practices, then that child, of course, is going to be growing up also knowing how to, or at least being exposed. I shouldn't speak for them, but at least being exposed to all of this. And that changes the next generation and the generation after that. It's just, there's no way for that to not have a positive impact of just like tuning into who we are, and then having the next generation be set up for a much easier time if it's in their karma.
I couldn't agree with every word. 100% resonate with everything. And I just don't see another way that you could add consciousness and conscious way of living and knowing how to use these tools to bring yourself back to your power, to your balance, back home, than these. I think like all over the world, right? Globally, I think these teachings have been gifted by source, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Know how to do that. And like you said, it is a science. And it's incredible that it's resurging back now from centuries ago.
Oh my gosh, yes, for sure. And like you said, download it. It's through the rishis, right? These sages that saw everything and just were able to then give that information to everybody. It's so trustworthy, right? And it's not a religion. No. It's not. You do see it in India a lot, and it is steeped in the Hindu culture, but it's a Vedic culture. It's not a religion, right? Ayurveda is not a religion, and it's not just in India. This is also the sages and everything that taught Ayurveda. They were all over the world. They were everywhere. So it's not just like one area of the world or from one group of people. This is a very universal, these are very universal truths. And I think you would really, I'll share a few things that aren't necessarily related to preconception, but in a way they are. And I think you'll like them, because I remember just like the morning routine and all of these things can feel so good, right? And rejuvenating to like wake up and have these tips and things. So it's called Dinacharya. And in Ayurveda, that's like your morning routine of what to do in the morning. And these practices can include anything from making sure that you're waking up, you know, an hour or an hour and a half before the sun rises, and spending that time in the meditation and getting those sunlight, those early rays of the sunlight, tongue scraping. And that is even in Ayurveda, they would use branches, you know, different types of branches to scrape off the toxins on the tongue that accumulate overnight. Drinking 2 warm, depending on your constitution, but 2 warm glasses of water in the morning to wake up the electricity in the body, to rehydrate the cells. And there's all of these, like Abhyanga, doing your exercise, and depending on what your constitution is, like, do you exercise super hard, half your body strength, you know, more light postures. There's all of this that's in there too, of what to do for exercise, doing the oil application, the Abhyanga on your system. There's dry herbal things you can do on your body. There's so much. There's so much. Yes, all of it.
Just thinking about it feels so good.
Totally. And it's all written out, and it all depends on who you are. And so this is the benefit of finding somebody who has learned Ayurveda and who is learning Ayurveda, because it's not the one size for every person. And so working with somebody who has learned that, the benefit is that you are then able to have something really specific for what's working for you right now. And it changes as you become more balanced. You know, it changes.
Yeah, at that point, you're just maintaining, you're not trying to bring yourself to balance.
That's right.
You could share a couple, because you said a lot of good stuff for the morning. Just a few things that we could do in the evening, according to these teachings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of that, it just depends on kind of what your constitution is, but putting oil on your feet is so grounding. Also, you can get the sesame oil is queen, or as I like to say, or king of oils. It's just so it's what's talked about the most. I like putting that oil on your feet can be really grounding for in the evening, and making sure that you can like bring your system down. Spending time in the stillness. There's so much. There's so much. I do like to encourage people with food and eating to make sure that they're eating with the sun. So your digestion is mirrored by the sun. And so it's often supposed to be your second heaviest meal is in the morning, not your heaviest meal, not your lightest meal. Your second heaviest meal is in the morning as the sun is rising and gaining its potency. Your heaviest meal is supposed to be at noon when the sun's at its peak. And then in the evening, it's your lightest meal, where the sun is it's heading away from us at that point. And so our Agni, our digestive fire, is not as strong. So evening time is not really the time for indulging in a big, heavy meal, because it can lead to just like we're putting too many logs on a fire that's dwindling down for the evening. So I often encourage people in evening to eat a little bit lighter and have their heaviest meals, you know, during the brightest and like fieriest time.
Makes sense. I mean,
of the day.
right? So it makes sense that we'd cultivate a lifestyle that mirrors nature because we're not separate from it. So it makes total sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's so much to say. There's so much
4 years
to say.
to learn, so there's a reason why, right? It's a vast amount of knowledge, but I think we've gone through so many beginner kind of understandings and practices to at least get somebody started. And of course, they can always reach out to you to learn more. And even the content you share is so helpful and very digestible and simple.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is needed, right? We're also overloaded already with over information. It's like, how can we take these ancient wisdom teachings? That's my personal intention. How can I take all of this stuff and simplify it and make it easy and practical so that I can then apply it? Because if it's complicated,
it's overwhelming.
So I love that what you shared is very doable and easy to kind of incorporate little by little, right? You don't want to, like I said, like you said, sorry, overwhelm yourself, and just add it in slowly into your routine. It's a lifestyle. It's just a lifestyle change. Sorry, my cats are fighting. They're ready for their lunch. They've been meowing at me from different corners. This is real life, everybody. This is sorry, just attacking her. Zizu. See? That's what you get for working from home.
Totally.
Oh, good. I mean, I can edit this out, but
no worries at all.
we did a pause on that. We just to kind of float back into it. We're talking about practice it. What we were just talking about
Just
before.
the ease.
Yeah.
That Ayurveda is not meant to be something that is overwhelming. This is something I really want people to be able to hear, is that you're right, there is a lot of information out there. What cleanse? What diet? Do I eat this? Do I not eat that? What about this? And what am I supposed to do in the morning or evening, and all of these things? And it can just being a human trying to figure out with the overwhelming amount of information, it can be a lot. And I want people to know that Ayurveda can meet you very gently, exactly where you are, that you're on time, and that there's no need to stress. And these practices can be implemented slowly, and they are supportive. And it's not about, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? But it is really lovely, especially if you have a lot of imbalances going on, or if you're hoping for, like the women that I have carved myself out to work with, if you're hoping for pregnancy and you want to do it in a conscious way, it is nice to have guidance with some of these things, because there are a lot of people, and myself included, that have experienced really intense imbalances. And when we're looking at that, yes, there are things like, no, you want to kind of avoid this right now. Like I don't always start people off with Abhyanga, because it can be heavy. And if you have blockages in your channels, if you have blockages happening in your channels and things aren't flowing, and you're just like putting heavy oil on or putting heavier herbs into your system, then you can create more blockages. So this is that line of, okay, there's these beautiful practices, and feel empowered to do them and listen to how your body responds to them. But if we have some things that are severely vitiated, or you have a really intentional goal, particularly with bringing in a new human into this world, and you want to be guided in that, having somebody who has learned it, who is learning it, a Vaidya, an Ayurvedic doctor or a practitioner, is really helpful, because it's just a little hand holding that we can need sometimes, depending on where we are. But yeah, like oil pulling, tongue scraping, having water in the morning. Start with one thing. I always like to tell people to start with just get up earlier, get up earlier and sit with yourself, really. and tongue scraping. I love those two. I'm like, oh, those are so good. But one thing at a time, and that's okay. We don't have to do the whole New Year's resolution and change your whole life because it's Monday or it's January 1st or it's the new moon or full moon. It doesn't have to be like that. Setting an intention is great. Ayurveda is supportive and it'll meet you right where you are, but no need to be overwhelmed. And if you do have things that you need more support with, finding somebody who's learned it, that's also a really great option.
Absolutely. It's not a race. I feel like that's
yes.
what I've learned is that literally we have our entire lifetime to get ourselves to the optimal state of well-being. And I 100% agree with you. One small step at a time, incorporating these wellness rituals into your everyday life that can support you in feeling the best you possibly can, because you're just allowing to have this vessel, this home, this body be the healthiest for the soul to be able to share its gifts.
Yeah.
The body and the mind, because I feel like body mind is not really separate, it's just this vessel through which the soul is then able to express itself. And the healthier the mind and the body, then the more fun the soul can have through this vessel. So I think this is truly, I would absolutely not only love to learn, but in this new earth community, for sure, it's going to be one of the base foundational ways that we learn how to live, essentially, with these teachings that were gifted to us through the generations. So good. It's so good. I've thought about this for a long time, but I think also with working with someone, what could be a better investment than your own well-being, right? Like if I were to start over with having children, like there's literally no greater gift you can give yourself or the next 7 generations than making sure that you bring yourself into a best feeling place and balance all these layers.
Yeah.
Just like, what's more important than that?
I like to think of it too, and lately have been thinking this past year or so, is really, we're always in devotion to something, right? Because we're just creators. And when we decide that, oh, wow, I'm going to choose to be in devotion to self.
Yeah. You're really in devotion to source, because
that's what I mean. Yeah. Like source, self, God, guru, whatever the word is that resonates. That's what's extending in this experience. So when you feed yourself, who are you feeding?
Exactly.
When you feed your children, when you feed someone else, who are you feeding? Like what this devotion to who is being fed here? Who am I putting this oil on?
So beautiful.
Who am I sitting with? Right? It's this devotion. And if we can think about life in that way, it changes everything, even our thoughts. Who are these thoughts? Like, what are these thoughts? Do I really want them? When we're thinking about life as a devotion to self, God, guru, source, that is a real game changer.
It just, to me, the word that I feel when you speak like this is it's just sacred. Every moment is then sacred, right? Because you are in this dance with life force that's in everything, and you get to be it, nourish it, take care of it, play with it, experience. It's just so good. I love this conversation. Thank you for making the time. If there's anything else you want to share, by all means. I think this is, it's like an introduction into a way of life. So you cannot fit all of that into one conversation, but I think it was a beautiful start. And if you wanted to share anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd love to share how people can get in touch with me.
Yes, that would be
Yeah, but yeah, I think I agree. There's so much that can be said about it, but I am a Ayurvedic preconception coach and an Ayurvedic pregnancy postpartum nutrition and support doula. And the best way people can get a hold of me is I have my website, bijavitality.com. And bija means seed, I should say, in Sanskrit. And so my hope and my dream is to help 1,000 women, really, truly. I'm going to start my tally marking, helping 1,000 women cultivate that seed that's already there in themselves and cultivate their own vitality. And through using Ayurveda and the ancient practices of Ayurveda to help them to cultivate their own vitality. I'm particularly passionate about helping women in preconception and pregnancy and postpartum time. And right now there's 3 different ways that you can work with me. So the first one is that I have a beautiful one-on-one 3-month preconception coaching container. And we work on cultivating the mind, cultivating body vitality, and the sacred non-toxic home environment. And you get to do video calls with me every week and do Voxer with the app Voxer. We can talk Monday through Friday. And it's a beautiful option for women who are wanting to consciously prepare for a conscious conception and pregnancy. And the second way that people can work with me is I do one-time one-off sessions that are an hour video sessions. And it's for women who are like, give me the tips and the steps. I want them, like, what can I do right now? And I spend time in a questionnaire with you, and I am able to chat with you for an hour. And then you walk away with 3 to 5 super potent, super highly individualized action steps that you can take right now to step into your most sensual, juicy, fertile, rejuvenated self to prepare for a conscious conception. And then if you're local in Boulder County, Colorado, I also provide in-person high-touch pregnancy and postpartum support as well, where I cook for you and actually do the Abhyanga oil application on your body and come to your home. And if you're pregnant, I cook for you. We can talk about that. And then in postpartum, I offer all of those services as well. And the best way to find me is through my website and Bija Vitality on Instagram and Facebook and all the social media things. But I'm super grateful to you, Layla, that we have connected. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to chat with you again and share about Ayurveda. It's very humbling to me. And we could talk for so long about the conscious community, and I have all of those hopes and dreams too. We'll save it for another time, but oh man, there's so much to say about raising children and the way that Ayurveda can support all of that as well. So I just am grateful to you for the time.
Absolutely. And like, I share that same desire to have more conversations like that. And that's why I feel like every time I sit down in stillness, I just can't help but hear this nudge, this drive of creating this container, this conscious community where we can gather every week, all of us that have this seed within us for this to exist. And that's my next kind of project. We chatted a bit about that before we started recording, that's what I feel like is most needed right now. This container where we can share and mastermind and dream. And I feel like that's when Source is the happiest, because it's like, it's like a dance party. Like, we get to do this. We actually get to.
I know it.
Space. And so for anyone listening, if this speaks to you in the next, 1 to 2 to 3 months, that's my intention, to create this container for us to meet every week and just have these conversations. And for all of us that, we all have a wealth of knowledge, for all of us to share what we know so that the whole can be supported and we can all be held in this journey home, because that's what's happening here. Truly, we're just all walking home, back to the heart, back to feeling good, because it's our birthright. We're meant to feel good.
Yes.
Meant to be easy and effortless and fun. And there's so much abundance on this incredible, magical planet. It's all for us. And I get so emotional when I talk about the earth, because everything is for us, So let's learn how to live in harmony with her, with ourselves, and with each other. So it's just, there's so much to look forward to. And like I said, I could stay here all day, but
I know.
Pleasure. This is what lights me up. And I'm so grateful to have these conversations and to have you on the planet doing this work, because literally there's no better, not no better work, but there's no more important work for the new generations to come than to have a conscious container within the home that can support those new souls, because they are coming in with so much more light. And if you have the proper environment in the parents and in the home and in the community at large, we are already in the new earth then,
Yeah.
So,
Make me all teary-eyed too.
it's beautiful, because I can really feel it's already here, and it's getting we're drawing it to us as we raise our vibration. Our heart is the magnet, right? So we're drawing it, and
That's right.
It's palpable. I can feel it. So I'm just looking forward to it. And what's left for us to do is, anytime I tune in, it's just celebrate, feel good. The better we feel, the faster these visions and dreams will be created through us, as us. So exciting.
And stepping into the feeling, as we've talked about so much. That's it.
Secret. It really is, because we are magnets. Our heart is the magnet. So it's all about the heart.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you so much. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Layla.
Thank you so much, love.
You too. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode to the very end. What did you think of this episode? I genuinely want to connect with you, and I want to know what you're taking away from these episodes. If it's fun for you, please take a screenshot of yourself listening to the podcast and share with me over on Instagram, because I would love, love, love to connect with you there. And this is how we can really grow this community, because we are truly all in this together. And if this episode resonated with you in any way, I would be so appreciative if you would share it with your loved ones. Share it with your circle of friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone who you know might be struggling, anyone in your life that you care about and you want to see them happy, healthy, thriving. This podcast is really, truly for me a co-creation. And your support in spreading its mission and message would mean the world to me. And it's instrumental to the success of this podcast. And to me, I define success as the information that's shared is able to serve someone in a transformative, practical, applicable way and actually make a positive impact on someone's life. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, also, if you could, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review or a comment. Reviews and comments are so helpful because they help others to discover the podcast. So whichever platform you're listening on, please take a moment to share your thoughts if you want to support me and this podcast. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening and sharing it with others. Thank you for your comments and your feedback. It makes my day and it truly means the world to me. I look forward to continuing to share incredible, valuable content with you with the intention of bringing more awareness and more light, of transforming lives and transforming the world. Thank you for being you and shining your bright light. The world is truly a better place because you exist. So until next time, stay conscious.